Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. So welcome. Today I have with me Hope Fitzgerald, and let me tell you a little bit about Hope. Since 2010, Hope has been passionately sharing the Infinity Wave, a 10th dimensional energy tool revealed to her in a series of visions to accelerate personal and global spiritual evolution and increase joy and freedom even during tumultuous times. Her recent best-selling book, The Infinity Wave, Mastering the Art of Love, Compassion, and Flow, describes the wave's astounding arrival and the ensuing lessons it brought. She's conducted workshops on this powerful energy, appeared on multiple global platforms, and thanks to the wave's influence has developed into a channel for a wide range of etheric masters. Hope uses intuitive dowsing to empower clients with rapid life insights and transformations. She also leads groups annually to potent sites around the world to teach the art of communicating with landscapes, believing that when the powerhouse of the human heart interacts with a highly charged site, an alchemy occurs that can create a profound shift in consciousness. So welcome today, Hope.
Thank you so much, Maureen.
Well, as I had mentioned to you, I'm a fellow dowser and have been working with landscapes for a while, but this part of your bio really hit me very strongly, the art of communicating with landscapes and connecting that with the powerhouse of the human heart, bringing alchemy to higher consciousness. I feel like those words so aptly describe where I feel I'm heading and many of us are heading in energy work.
Well, it's something that I discovered by experimentation, I was led by dowsing to go to certain sites in southwestern England. And without knowing, within my mind, what was what, just following the advice of the dowsing, we came upon these different stone circles and standing stones, panniers, what they call a pannier or dolmen. And each one seemed to be laid out for us as we traveled almost like a puzzle or a trail. And this was kind of in I guess it was 2011, and it was the first time that I had completely given over a trip to dowsing. But at that point, I had been teaching the wave for 9 months. And so I was in a completely different state of mind where I was in so much trust, that I just went wherever I was told to go. And basically that hasn't changed much since, but that was the beginning. And I just remember how in that open-hearted state that I was in, and I hope still in, but at that time it was new, to stand in land that had already been designated by our ancestors as potent. Now, just because they identified it as potent doesn't mean it still is. You can douse to find out. Like, let's say a stone circle was put somewhere at one time, there were certain energetics that were set up, and sometimes they can be deactivated. A circle can be deactivated if they're being invaded. Let's say they don't want somebody else to take the power of their circle, so they'll do things to deactivate it. But many of them still do carry a potency, and not just the potency of the circle, let's say, itself, but the fact that that circle lines up with then a dolmen, lines up with a cathedral, lines up with a well, like creating a ley, what we call a ley, an L-E-Y. A ley is 4 or more significant structures or landscape anomalies, like a well, a spring, in a row. where you can't make it up. Like it's a row, it's a straight line. And so that then there is something working beneath the surface to create an energy line, a lay. So anyway, it wasn't until I went there and just allowed myself to be led from one place to the next that I could feel my whole body and persona shift. And I was so available to the landscape and so available to being led and to be in curiosity and wonder that I could feel myself being affected. And I learned so much from that because I realized, there is just only so much that our book learning can bring us. It is through experience that we really change. And sometimes we can have an experience in a meditation that is profound and life-changing. And sometimes we can be on potent land, and that acts like a springboard. We're even more available when we're on potent land, is what I come to believe. So that's why I do a trip every year. I dowse for if I should do a trip, if so, where, if so, when. And I just dowse the whole thing. And every time that I follow those directions, the trips go beautifully. And people are, we get into kind of a bubble, a wave bubble, and we have an extraordinary time. So that kind of gives you a understanding of how I came to this.
It really is amazing. It is so true. The land has so much to offer us when we are available to co-create. It is where we're heading. Absolutely. Now, you brought up the wave. I've mentioned the wave as this 10th dimensional energy tool. Can you share with listeners what that is?
As briefly as possible, it is a beautiful, as you say, 10th dimensional energy. It is basically love and compassion to the nth degree, to the infinite degree. And it can be imagined in this figurative flowing water. That's just the metaphor. That's the image that we can sort of grab onto as humans and go, okay, I can work with that. Otherwise, it would be too amorphous. And how do I even access this thing? So we have this symbol, this beautiful geometry, and the geometry is as significant as the water. And it's really interesting because people tend to, they gravitate to the geometry, but they kind of forget a little bit about the water piece. And the water is essential because the geometry otherwise would be fixed. And what we are being asked to remember is that we are never fixed. Nothing is ever fixed. Even those big stones in those circles aren't fixed. Everything, as we know, is moving, even at a very slow rate, but it's still moving. And we know, look, the adepts can put their hands through rocks and things like that because they recognize and they can change their vibration in order to pass through or become one with the whatever surface it is. So the wave is a tool to help us stay in flow. When we're in a state of love and compassion, we're automatically in flow. We don't have time to sit around and, meditate for hours on end or go to a cave or go to a forest. We don't have time in our daily lives. And there are so many things coming at us every single moment. Anything could happen. We're in such a time of chaos and of life changing dramatically that we can't keep up unless we have something fast. And a friend of mine nicknamed the wave the cosmic easy button. Because you can just pull it into your consciousness. Put that watery figure eight from head to toe or in your heart or in your head or out in front of you or in your car or on your plane or whatever it is. And you immediately impact the field you're in. The flow of the water, the flow of love and compassion immediately starts to impact, just like the adept puts his hand through the stone. The watery flow, the idea, pulling that consciousness, that frequency of the love and compassion into the field, starts to permeate it and shift things around, lifting them to their highest capacity. So if we accept the fact that we're in 3D, we sort of have a ceiling on top, right? And everything happens underneath the ceiling, the struggle of the yes or no, or back and forth, or, who's right, who's wrong. And it's very locked in. But that's not going to help us get to the next place. What's going to help us get to the next place is the capability to open to higher perspectives. When we bring in 10th dimensional love and compassion, we pierce that ceiling of 3D, and now we open the gates. Now, does that mean we immediately go to 10D? No. What it does is just like diluting and opening, making more spacious, so that maybe we're going to now have a conversation that's in 4D or 5D. We don't even need to know. What we do notice is it gets easier. The language turns softer. There's more problem solving and less arguing and less resistance. Being in flow means non-resistance, right? So we're not going to break through all the chaos by being in resistance. We're going to break with it.
Oh, everything
flow.
You're saying completely resonates with me, and I'm sure many of the listeners as well. I mean, the words you're using, I really feel so strongly that the words we use to talk about our times is so important. So words like spacious, love, compassion, softer, curiosity, and wonder. I'm living in a place that I'm really feeling that curiosity and wonder is so important to our next stage of evolution. So I am right there with you. I know many of the listeners are as well. I'm just feeling, when I talk to you, I'm just feeling like being able to breathe and to expand and feel in more of a growth consciousness and an upward consciousness. So you are bringing so much love with this work, so much what we need today.
Well, it is the antidote, right? Love and compassion, because what do we do with the things that are happening around the world? Compassion is the highest form. To me, it's a higher vibration than even empathy, because you can tap into the sadness, for lack of there's so many words, but let's just work with sadness for now. You can tap into the sadness while maintaining your own sovereignty. So it's a yes and how you can characterize and know that you're no longer in 3D, which is yes or no, is when you can start to handle multiple points of view at the same time, and you can start to hold in your own field multiple emotions or multiple states. So I can be in compassion for someone or a country or a group or whatever, while I also hold on to my own sense of curiosity, wonder, joy, and love. So I can hold both things. This takes a little doing, it takes a little getting used to. We're not trained to do this, really. We are more trained to be one or the other. And what I find is that, going back to the cosmic easy button, when I hear about something that's happened in the world, well, the old me, let's say, the old me would maybe rush to judgment. about whoever the perpetrator of the thing was and get up in arms and all of that, right? Well, that's a very 3D thing to be. When we can say, yes, that thing happened and those people did that thing, and I don't know everything there is to know about the situation. And I'm not going to get embroiled emotionally in that. I'm going to step back. I'm going to send them a wave. I'm going to send them love and compassion. And I'm going to just pray, basically. A wave is a way of praying that the highest and best emerge out of the situation and that we all learn something. So, it's tough because it's tough to handle everything. And we tend to get weighed down. And that takes us right back into 3D. And it gets us right back in the struggle. And that's not where we want to live. We want to live above the fray. Still witness, still participating in the human story, but not hooked.
Yeah, it's that like bird's eye view of kind of stepping out of the frame to see the whole picture. That is what we're being asked to do. Definitely. Wow.
Yeah, so while still loving, while still caring, that's it's a little bit of a tricky balance to find, but it's there. And the wave helps you get there faster. That's the point.
In addition to everything you just said about the wave, is that it's so simple. And I think where we are in our evolution is recognizing that stepping into like the higher dimensions or higher consciousness is as simple as could be. It does not require, like you said, going away to the cave and meditating for months or years. We no longer have that luxury. We have to be here now, and we have to help evolve ourselves, help hopefully influence others in that evolution with our energy. And yeah, it is so powerful. Simple, simple, simple.
I was actually really surprised when I found out how available all these guides and helpers are, how right there, a creator, whoever, anything, anyone, any being, whatever you want to talk to, they're right there. And all of the complications that I'm not a scientist, but I have a scientific mind. I like to measure things and test things and research things. I was just little old me, was thinking, what's the unifying principle? There's got to be something that's the unifying principle. And it's got to be something in our faces that we just are not used to looking at. We just take it for granted. Whatever it is, it's got to be God. It's got to be so. And I remember that I was having a session with channeling session with just myself. And, I was speaking to a variety of beings, and then Creator comes in, and I said, so what's the deal here? It's really, I want to find what this is. And Creator showed me a very black background, very black. And then he showed me, I say he, but a figure 8 on its side, moving, kind of black on black. And on the figure 8 moving was all of history. Everything that has happened and everything that will happen, moving in that infinity design. And I said, no, it can't be that simple. And Creator said, why not? It's you're the one making the qualification of complex. It's simple. Now, what does that actually mean? I'm not entirely sure. we go around and around, we're evolving, we're, whatever. I'm not quite sure all the ramifications of that. But the message of the real learning was how we complicate things. And it could be really, really, the infinity is so simple in its design and its message.
Well, it's fascinating that you saw that, and it's something. It's actually the infinity wave is something that I've used in my training with feng shui and talking about yin and yang, and those, of course, polar opposites, but they're complementary, and that I always would talk about how we're on that extreme yang curve with the masculine, the patriarchy, and all of the good things that are the masculine energy, but it's out of balance. It's at an extreme, and it's now kind of rounding the corner and heading back toward more yin and more balance. And that is the sweet spot. It's in that middle of that infinity curve.
Well, since you're a dowser, so I'm going to introduce an idea to you. And so I see the figure 8 also as a peduncle. When we come to the narrowing of in the center, that's a peduncle. That means, I talk about it in my book, peduncle. It's a growth opportunity. It's a squeeze that produces an evolutionary change. So an atom would go through the peduncle and become a molecule, become a slightly more elegant, more enlightened version of whatever it was before. So each of us is going through our own series. And once we go through the peduncle, then we start to expand with that new understanding, that new interest. And then we come around, and now we're going to go through the squeeze again. And this time we're going to come out again, and we're going to come through and expand and contract. So that is actually the rhythm of nature when you think about it. We contracts in the winter, it expands in the summer, and a lot of things that fall into that pattern. So we're all somewhere on the trajectory of our own infinity, right? And we may be in an expansion phase, we may be moving into crosshairs of the peduncle, but we're also, as a collective, in that pattern. You can douse, I do this for people, for where you are personally and then collectively on the trajectory. Okay? You can say, first of all, am I in a peduncle now? And if it says yes, then okay, how far am I into it? 0%, 5, 10, 15%, wherever you are. Okay, I'm 95% in my peduncle. Oh my gosh, then I'm just about to hit the biggest moment of my peduncle. And then I know I am going to move through it because it's all flowing. It's water. And we can measure where we are as a collective in the masculine and feminine. And I think we're farther along than you might think. My guess is, I think, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. And it would be cool, actually, to douse for it so that we can look down the road, in a year and say, well, how far are we now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think this is a great segue into talking about our experiences in nature, because as a global society, I guess, we have become more and more disconnected from nature. No one needs to really tell us that, but we have gotten to this point, and now there's such an awareness, I think, among certain circles that we absolutely need to come back to experience more of nature. So with this podcast, sharing stories that have moved us, is there a story that you would like to share, or more than one?
Well, I have this beautiful moment that happened to me. I lived in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts and built a house on land that had a very old farmhouse. And in the old days, like in the 1700s, it was a habit, a beautiful expression, actually, when a young couple got married and had their first dwelling, they would plant, or their relatives would plant, two rock maples, they're called, and they could also be called sugar maples, to create a triangle with the front door. So the front door was the apex of the triangle, and then
Wow.
the two trees were planted out from that. And that was to symbolize the sturdiness of their relationship and
Wow.
their home. It was beautiful, right? Well, we purchased this land and tore down the 1700s house because it was in terrible disrepair. But for a long time, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to either buy that house, tear it down because it would be a lot more expensive, or buy on the property that was. And every time I would turn, when I was still looking at the land, I would turn to go towards the away from the house that needed to be torn down and back towards the undeveloped land. I would feel a tug on my shoulder, literally like my shirt being tugged. And I'd turn around and I'd see these two 300-year-old trees. And I'd go, you guys want me to be here in the house, don't you? so so we bought the house because of those trees. Okay, so time goes by, we build our house. It was beautiful, and I changed the driveway so it didn't encroach on one of the trees so much, and they were just prominently featured between the road and the house. And I loved those trees so much. And come to find out, they were up they were married as well. And one was named Priscilla and the other was named Matar. And their branches met over the driveway. They were huge trees. And I found all this out because when we got the house done, we were on a green building tour in the Berkshires, and people came by and somebody said, "Do you know that you have bridal trees?" And I said, "No." And that's when I heard the story about with the wedding and all that. And so I absolutely honored those trees. And to find out that they were a pair and they were masculine and feminine, it was really fantastic. Well, I would walk every day about 3.5 miles. And when I come back, I would stand in between them and I would run a wave to one with me in the middle and then to the other, right? And I would stand there in this wave between them. And one time I was doing that and I said out loud, "I just love you both so much." Now, it was a very still day. It was a warm day. And what happened was I got rained on. The trees shook and little droplets of water came down on me. There was not, I looked around. I'm like, is there a breeze? There was no breeze.
Wow.
Those trees just shook. And little droplets, probably like dew from the night before, because it hadn't rained. And it was such a moment. I was like, I can't, oh my God. Wow. So it's interesting because I was recently at the Dowsing conference in American Society of just Dowser concerts in outside of Boston. And I gave a talk. And my talk was about how using the infinity wave can enhance your dowsing in nature. And I took a friend of mine who is used to using pendulums but not rods. So I took him down to my park where I walk every day. And I said, okay, we're going to approach a variety of different trees. And first, I want you to ask with the rods if the tree would be willing to have a conversation with you. Because as you probably know, not every tree wants to have a chat. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how willing would you be to have a chat with me? And I stood off to the side, so I wasn't a part of it. And he would regularly get 1 or 2 as the willingness of the tree. And I said, okay, now I want you to wave with the tree for 30 seconds, and then we'll ask again. He waved for 30 seconds. I timed him. He would ask again, 9 or 10 on the scale. So there are ways to open the field between us and whatever it is that is in the natural landscape. And I feel that it is respectful to do so. So the wave is an easy way to do it. You can always leave an offering, piece of hair, tobacco, or an honoring of some sort. But the wave works really, really well. So just do that. And the last thing I'm going to say is a little, you can allow yourself, if you wave, let's say, with a big stone, like a monolithic stone that you would find in a dolmen or in a big stone circle, and you gravitate to one of the stones, let's say, you just feel called to go over there. You start waving with the stone. What you're going to probably find is you're going to want to move closer and closer and closer to the stone until perhaps you have your heart and your head, your third eye, on the stone. And you keep waving. And the next thing you know, it's hard to get away. It becomes a magnetizing, who knows what it is, but energetically you can become one with that stone. It's happened to me many times, and it's the most blissful state. I cannot even explain it, but it's heaven. So, it could be a stream, it could be a lake, it could be any number of things. But if you start to feel pulled somewhere, follow your gut on that. Go with it.
Have you worked with people that are feeling like, I don't have a good intuition, I'm not connected to nature, like I'm never going to have a real like magical experience with a tree or a rock? So, okay. So can you share a little bit about that? Okay.
Yes, all the time.
I am thinking about, we have to be open to experience in nature in order to have these experiences. When we're closed and we're fearful or we're just stressed out, we need to have that magic kind of open to us. So by leading people into doing this little, very simple exercise of the wave, it helps them open up.
It does. Because whatever you're sending love and compassion to the tree, and it's coming around the bend and it's coming right back to you. And on infinitely, right? So it's going to change the field between you and the tree. It's going to connect your fields in a completely gentle, loving way. And everything just slows down and the connection can happen. The other thing is, it's kind of hypnotic to imagine the wave. Just imagine this figure 8 flowing back and forth. And that is a really great way to occupy the brain.
Yes.
Right? And to keep
Right.
the thoughts somewhere else as you're just focusing on that wave pattern. And when you're focusing on a wave pattern like that, what I find is I start to hear things, little things drop in, impressions. Now my busy mind is kind of off to the side and stuff can pop in. So, it's always, in my opinion, I mean, I don't like to say always, but it's often better. And the breathing ends up going with it. I exhale when I'm sending it out. I inhale just naturally. It's like a wave on the shore. It just goes out and it comes back in, and my breath goes right along with it naturally. I don't have to even focus on it. It just happens.
Wow. Wow. I can't wait now to try this out with some of my dowsing practice. This just and if you're not using dowsing, just getting out there into nature, that is just fabulous. I'm curious, but I love to ask people what their first remembrance as a child, like their first memory.
I do remember these smokestacks that had little red lights on them for airplanes being outside of a window. That's about my earliest memory.
Hey, is there any standout experience as a child that you feel like was prescient to what you're doing now?
Well, I used to have to walk quite a distance to school, and I would, on the days when it was, snowing and freezing cold and all of that, it took a while to get there. I would imagine that I was floating in a bubble, a warm bubble. I often think back to that meditation, really, to place myself somewhere else where I was comfortable as I went through my life of walking to school, creating another reality.
Yeah.
So I guess that's somewhat
wonderful.
Similar.
And there was a quote on your website. Actually, I think it was under your Mount Shasta retreat that's coming up. And it says, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And I just love that quote where, yes, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaotic energy, but we have to focus on the coherence, our own personal coherence, keeping our energy together, staying centered, sending out love and compassion to others. Such a beautiful message that you bring, especially in today's world. And sending it out to that sea of chaos to bring a new order to the whole system.
I had every month I have all these Monday night meditations, free meditations, but I also have something called a channeling salon where people can come and ask a question of a being that whoever comes in. It's like a revolving door now. I don't ever know who's coming in, but in advance, that is. And then, last week, Mary Magdalene came in at the end of a very, she followed a very, very deep and kind of just sad transmission from a Native American, but she talked about keeping your sights on the high horizon. Just another way of talking about an island of coherence, keeping your sights on the high horizon, because if you start to gaze down, what we were talking about at the beginning, you're going to get sucked in and pulled into that 3D density. Will keep your sights, even if you don't know what the high horizon looks like, it's where you're placing your energy. It's an uplifted state. And we're each needed as these beacons. We're often, like, one of the beings that came through talked about how, it was Merlin, talked about how we're like the fence posts planted across the landscape as a and for others to kind of come and attach themselves to in a good way, like lean on, or yes, because we're the steady eddies. And it's so important for us to maintain that.
And I just got this connection with your smokestacks with the red lights, the beacons in the sky.
There we go. There it is.
Oh my gosh, I
There it
love it.
is.
I have loved all of this conversation, Hope. I am so happy that you were able to spend a few minutes with me. I know you're very busy, and can you tell us the name of your website?
Sure, it's spreadinfinitehope.com. And yeah, and I'm on, all the places.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you, all of you who have watched and listened, and would love for you to like, share, and please comment. Would love to hear your thoughts about this talk. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth Podcast. Comment below, share, and most of all, please hit the subscribe button so that you'll hear when we publish another inspiring episode. You can visit us at luminous-spaces.com for more information on our online courses, retreats, and offerings. Thank you and have a magical day.